now building things that only developers used to be able to make. I know I am. But while most people are using AI to ship the same work but faster, some people are using it to achieve things that they could never have imagined being able to do themselves before. So today we're talking about how to build beyond your own expertise.
This is WP Product Talk, a place where every week we bring you insights, product marketing, business management and growth, customer experience, product development, and more. It's your go-to podcast for WordPress product owners by WordPress product owners. And now, enjoy the show.
Hi, I'm Katie Keith from Barn2.
And I'm Zach Katz from Gravity Kit.
Now, before we get started, if you benefit from WP Product Talk, we'd love your support. The easiest way is just to hit subscribe right now, which only takes you a second and it makes a big difference. Thank you so much.
And a huge thanks to Freemius for being our exclusive growth partner. If you don't know about Freemius, they help software makers grow, monetize, and succeed. They're a merchant of record platform, which means they handle everything around selling software, like checkout, payment, subscriptions, licensing, updates, global tax compliance. No thanks. Let Freemius handle that for you. Using Freemius means you can focus on building amazing products and not all that other stuff.
Absolutely. Right. Well, let's get into the topic of using AI to build beyond your own expertise. For this, we've invited Ross to the show. Welcome, Ross.
Hi, guys.
Thank you so much for coming on. To start, could you tell everyone a bit about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Ross Marcelli. I'm the founder of the Search and Filter plugin. I've been in WordPress for over 10 years. Started with an agency based in London. Built a plugin called Search and Filter as a side gig. And then a few years ago, it became my main gig and the agency became the side gig.
Nice. Well, thank you for coming on. And for anybody watching on YouTube, we encourage you to leave your questions, comments, or feedback in the comments section. And we'll highlight your comments and question and your experiences of using AI for development yourself to discuss live on the show. But now let's talk about using AI to go beyond what you could normally do yourself. So Ross, you contacted us because you have got some particularly impressive examples of work that you're doing in this area. Could you tell us a bit about how you've been using AI in that way? And I'm particularly keen to hear about how to do it responsibly if it's things you're building that you couldn't actually do as a developer yourself.
Yeah, so I think like a lot of developers, we've been dabbling with AI for a little while now, more and more as time goes on. And I guess like over time, you get more comfortable, you find the limits and kind of like push more and more and more. So for me, started all the way back with, say, the Cursor IDE, which is like a AI-powered autocomplete when you're coding. And that was like magic a year ago-ish, or maybe a bit more than that. And then from there, eventually, the models got better and you started to, being able to like prompt your way to features and prompt your way to quite big pieces of work. And that's all kind of within quite familiar territory. You've got a WordPress plugin, you know it inside out. So you start kind of expanding on that and it's quite comfortable. And then I don't know when the turning point was. I think it was, for me, it was when Opus 4.6 came out, which might have been like October last year or something like that. And just kind of the game leveled up a little bit, or at least I got more comfortable, one or the other. And then the kind of first time I wanted to really, I would say I really pushed a little bit further than usual was with Search and Filter. We have a really complex, one of the most complex parts of the plugin is the indexing system. It's like the bottleneck for performance. It's just generally complex on so many levels. It has to sync with all the data on your site and with a bunch of plugins. So I decided to kind of go down a rabbit hole on that one and see, like, is there stuff that I haven't tried that I could do? Basically, I felt like I'd exhausted most of my options without sinking, months of research and time into this specific topic. So yeah, I got kind of cloud.ai, the research mode, the deep research mode, to go and investigate what enterprise is doing, what the big companies are doing, what people are doing at scale, rather than in a WordPress site constrained by MySQL and kind of a smaller, more restrictive environment. And yeah, just kind of did a really deep dive with that. And from there, I got lots of interesting information, synthesized all the information, and kind of just came up with these cool techniques that I haven't seen in WordPress, and maybe someone's done it somewhere. But I've researched competitors and I've researched similar plugins. I've never really seen these techniques being used. So kind of just building these huge research reports from, like Algolia, Elasticsearch, and all kinds of things, and kind of collecting all these techniques and data, and pulling in like research papers and articles that experts have written, and just kind of having this huge brain dump of info that I didn't really know much about. I was able to understand it more or less, because it's kind of adjacent to what I do. So just kind of did a deep dive into that. And then, yeah, basically just kind of the method that I have when I do these research tasks is to kind of, cast a net wide, get all the data in that you can kind of gather. I specifically prompt it to say, like, don't exclude anything, like, include weird left field ideas, things that haven't been proven, because then I want to decide whether or not it's worthy or not. So then we get all that data back. And then the kind of responsible part is proving every theory with a test or with a benchmark. So you'll get a technique that you found, you'll write it in isolation, completely separate from the plugin that you're building, and you'll kind of build a testing framework, and you'll make sure that it does what it's supposed to do, or maybe it doesn't, and then you can rule that one out. So it's this kind of like iterative loop of gathering data, casting the net wide, and then just like step by step testing everything, and kind of just using the results to guide my decisions. And obviously in this particular field, I have some expertise, so it's a bit easier, but it's the same principle that I've been using to do kind of more left field work, let's say. Yeah.
I've been doing similar things. I love everything you were talking about, Ross. Especially one of the tips that I have for people is, asking AI to ask what questions you should be asking about the topic that you have, and then having it do the deep research, having it find the scientific papers, having it find the battle tested different libraries that are out there, and then having it compare them. One of the things that is most useful for me is, because AI just creates so much content for us to have to digest, is to have a pros and cons table, and have AI say, well, this is good for this reason, but it also could be a problem for this reason. And one of the things that I found it leads to is over-engineering. If I just let it do whatever is the best. WordPress, we have our customer bases use antiquated servers, old PHP versions, old MySQL versions. Like, we can't rely on a good tech stack. So that's one of the things that I would caution people about as well, is like, if you are experimenting in the code way and like and trying to come up with like novel ways to implement something in WordPress, the technical requirements are really a blocker in a lot of places.
Yeah, for sure. I run into the exact same thing as you. I would keep getting all this cool stuff coming back to me, but you just can't run on a shared server on some random host where you have absolutely zero control. So yeah, I kept having to remind it that we have limitations. And I think actually that's what the cool thing is, because in some of this research, I'm not able to apply all of it, but I'm able to apply some of it. And I think sometimes we just gloss over some of the things because it's, oh, you need X, Y, and Z on your server, or you need certain PHP extensions installed. But if you kind of like dig into some of like the sub ideas and concepts, you can find a way to make it applicable in a constrained environment.
Yeah, we're talking about building beyond our expertise, but actually what both of you have said indicates that you are adding a huge amount of your expertise to the process. So like knowing what to ask it to do, that's really important, because somebody with no experience wouldn't be able to say to it, remember that lots of WordPress users have antiquated environments and all of that stuff. So actually you are bringing your expertise.
Yeah. So last year I was just, okay, I was asking the question, what is possible with AI? Because the AI can do anything. You can, if it's solving mathematical proofs that nobody's been able to solve before, what can we do? And I was like, okay, let's think about all the different aspects that might have been under researched in all of industry. Like I said, hey, AI, find all the different possible places that are under research that we could possibly have a patent filed. I was like, okay, look, come up with some options. So we ended up doing like sprinkler systems for residential systems, and like coming up with an algorithm that accurately like calculated how much pressure and like maximizing or minimizing the number of sprinklers needed for a residential garden and like lawn and stuff. I learned a lot about lawn care and residential sprinkler systems that I didn't know before. And we came up with something that might have been novel. They did a whole patent search thing with the U.S. Trademark and Patent Office. But in the end, I didn't know what I was doing, so I didn't end up like moving forward with it. But what I did realize was that when you are expanding beyond your expertise, it's probably a good idea to find something you actually care about. Because
you're not passionate about sprinklers?
Well, I was passionate about exploring new areas of interest, and it was interesting learning all about like fluid pressure and like the really? Difference in slope in a lawn and how much that affects your pressure. Like I didn't really think about this stuff, and now I do more than I would have. But I do think that it's worth exploring and going beyond your expertise in places that you actually care about.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if you don't have any interest in it, you won't be interested in covering all the nooks and crannies and all the little details. You have to learn on the job at the same time. Like you have to be open-minded. You have to plan that you're going to also learn. It's not going to do everything for you, so you have to be ready to learn and interact and kind of get a bit smarter so you can ask the right questions. One thing I think is, as a dev, I think we have like an advantage in, and I think when you're operating in something that you don't know too much about, like I think one of the most important things is to have like in your back pocket is like, how do you approach problems that you don't know anything about? Like, what's the mental model? How do you construct a mental model about something that you don't know about? And I think devs have been doing that kind of like abstract mental models about problem spaces for ages. So I think we're kind of well equipped to kind of like, transfer that approach over to other fields and other things, because then we have this kind of like systematic, logical approach of like, if A, then B, and like do this. If that doesn't work, then do this other option, and kind of like approach things in that kind of way.
So I agree, Ross. And Katie's been on a journey for the past year of just kicking so much butt with AI stuff. Katie, you're not a developer, but you've fully been able to do like all sorts of stuff. I'd love to hear your experience like going beyond your comfort zone.
Yeah, weirdly, I'm actually the best example of this out of the three of us because I am not a developer. It's actually not even a year, it's 5 months since I discovered that AI had got good. So I first tried at your insistence, Zach, last September, and it was just terrible. I couldn't get anything good out of it as a non-developer. Interesting that Ross said it was about October that it got good. That was just after I gave up. So I waited 6 months and then tried again, and it was amazing and totally different. And I don't think I changed or the prompting. I think the AI models improved that much in that time. So my work has changed immeasurably since I started properly using AI, not just as chat, which I was obviously already doing, but as a proper agent and writing code and things like that. My favorite example is the SaaS that I've just single-handedly built and launched myself. We even have some paying customers. So our most popular plugin is Document Library Pro. And so basically, I just went off on my own and built a SaaS with Claude Code. So it's the same WordPress plugin, but it's a multi-site, and the user doesn't know they're using WordPress. So they have this multi-site subsite created. They add a document library. It doesn't look like WordPress at all. And then they can embed it in any platform. Like Wix, Shopify, Squarespace, whatever. And while the functionality of the plugin mostly came from the WordPress plugin, which real developers built themselves, I built the whole SaaS. And obviously, I'm not at all qualified to do that, but I think the ways that I did it responsibly was my knowledge of WordPress and the space and the main gotchas to be aware of. I used WordPress and WordPress multi-site for a reason. I know about the security and how all that works, whereas vibe coding a completely custom platform, I think would not have been responsible. Also, I use Stripe for the payments. I know how that works, and there's no loopholes in there. So by combining things I did know, I was able to create a whole SaaS, which I wouldn't have dreamed of doing before. So I'm not sure what my team think of me, because I have a whole team of developers, and I didn't even tell them I was doing it. Because I didn't know it would work. It was an experiment. And then after a few weeks, I was like, this is launchable. This is actually going to be a real product. So I told my team quite late in the day in the end, and I had a whole marketing site built, vibe coded, the design, the logo, everything. And I think it's really good. And we have got our first paying customers, like I said. So that's going way beyond my expertise. But again, I think the theme that is coming through is that you need to have some sort of foundation and knowledge in the area that you're doing it in, so that you know what questions to ask.
So, Katie, regarding questions to ask, I'm interested in what questions you asked the AI during building out your Document Library Pro.
Well, I did a lot of testing myself. This is not a one-shot thing. This is weeks of iteration. But I also listened to people like you, Zach, and what our mastermind group talks about, things like getting it to do a security audit. You guys told me about Fable when that came out partway through the project. So I got that to do a massive audit. What did you say about trying to get it, not aggression testing, but you've got a word for
adversarial?
Yeah, that's it. Adversarial testing to try and break it. So I did put it through its paces. I also followed you guys' advice about things like using multiple AI models. So I might have had like OpenAI's model looking at Claude Code's work and so on, and had multiple models fighting it out and so on. So I tried to do that responsibly. And then kind of after it was launched, I got my QA and my support team to QA it. But I was in full on founder mode by then. I wasn't going to let people delay me. I was just going ahead.
Well, and if you have no active users, a minor bug isn't a huge issue.
Yeah, it's not like Document Library Pro, the plugin, which has tens of thousands of people using it. It was just a brand new SaaS, so feels a bit less high stakes initially.
Yeah, so I think when you talk about the responsible part, I think it's while you're making a product or while you're investigating something or while you're trying something new, and you don't have any users, then there's not much to be responsible for unless you're actually releasing something. You've released it, so obviously that ups the game a little bit. But up until that stage, I think you can just be free to experiment. I think that the main thing is just to make sure that you're going in a direction and not being kind of led astray by the AI because you don't know the direction you're going in. I've had a couple of eureka moments where I think I've created something completely new, and all I needed to do was actually just research if there were things out there, and there were things out there.
Yeah, one of the things that I have AI do on a regular basis, because the longer you chat in an AI session, the more your context gets polluted. Like it becomes less reliable. It relies more on its own experience in your chat. If it thinks something's a good idea in your chat, it kind of builds on that and builds on that. And so like you have this one chat session that thinks it's a great idea. One tool that I use regularly while I have a chat session is having a sub agent created in that chat session that says, run this idea through a sub agent with no other context, so that you just start fresh and give the idea as all that you've, like, it removes all the other context. It just says, here's the idea, analyze it, find gaps in it, like critique this idea. And then that comes back in, and the agent's always like, oh yeah, that's a good point. Like I was completely wrong about what I thought.
Yeah, that's exactly my approach as well. I've kind of built a kind of orchestration system to work the way that I like to work, and almost anything that I do that's of any significance, I will run it against like 3 different models, and have them feedback, and even then get them to re-review whatever's happening or as we go along, or a checkpoint. So I'll use Cloud, I'll use OpenAI, Codex, Kimi I'm using now as well, and I was using Cursor, and they're all in the CLI, they're all fed into the system. So I just click a button and send a review off and get the feedback. And they don't know anything that's been discussed up until that point. They might just get a reference to like a plan document or something like that.
So I just saw a talk. I went to Laracon, which is Laravel's conference that was recently held in Boston, which is just an hour and a half away from me. So I figured I should see how the other half lives, right? And there was a really good talk there by somebody named Matt Stauffer, who runs Titan.com, like Titan a screw. They're one of the big Laracon or Laravel developers. And he had a great talk. I recommend everybody check it out, about it, that I found really inspiring, about cognitive surrender, is the phrase, which is like, you know what? I don't need to know any of this. AI knows it. And his point was that that is a failure of us as humans to kind of build our own knowledge and learn and grow. And why would we grow until AI and then plateau out instead of just continuing to grow? And he was suggesting that rather than cognitive surrender, as you learn how to use AI, as AI keeps pushing your boundaries beyond your previous expertise, have AI kind of talk to your AI, have your AI kind of train you on what it's doing and why, and try to learn some of the ideas that AI is implementing, so that as you get to be better, as you go beyond your levels of expertise before, AI kind of helps tutor you and onboard you into what it's been doing, so that you just continue to grow. And I loved that, because it's so easy to say, I don't need to know this. You know what? This new technology is beyond me. I will never know it. AI knows it. Well, I now refuse that notion, and I love the idea of like continuing to get better at what we're doing.
Yeah, that's I completely agree. That's kind of what I think is happening, at least for me, when I'm trying all these new things. Like, I'm genuinely learning more. Like, I know more about different fields. Sure, I'm not an expert, but I know I'm learning every step of the way as I go along, and then that helps you keep working in the kind of problem space that you're in.
So what about if you are building some software with AI that requires a programming language that you simply don't know? I know Jack Arturo from WP Fusion has done this a lot, where his AI has used languages that he has no knowledge of. So he knows PHP and whatever else, but he's using his knowledge as a developer to guide it, but he cannot check its code. How do you both feel about that?
I'm comfortable with it, because I feel like when you're a developer, it's like knowing a Romance language, and you go to France and you hear somebody speaking French. Well, if you already know Italian, you've got a leg up, or similar with Spanish. You know the concepts, you know the way that code generally works. So if you look at some code that you don't understand, it is understandable as long as you understand the concepts. So if you don't understand the concepts, that's a whole other thing. Like when I started learning object-oriented programming rather than functional programming, and I read a book on functional programming, PHP for functional programming. I'm like, okay, cool, now I know functional programming. And it's like, hold on a second, objects and like dependency injection and all this wild stuff. I had to up my game in terms of the concepts that I had to learn. But now that I know those concepts, if I go to another language, it doesn't matter. So I see AI writing code, and it's essentially an immersion language training system for me. I read the code, I'm like, oh, so that's how that works in that language. and you just kind of learn the language natively. And I don't write React, but now I understand React concepts so much better than I did before, when I wasn't seeing React being built and seeing the bugs being fixed. And I natively now have internalized some of the best practices for React by seeing the AI implement them based on what it knows as best practices.
Yeah, I think learning another language as a developer who has maybe already done more than one language is not that kind of crazy out there, getting out of your comfort zone. I think you could have trained yourself to learn another language just given X amount of time. So it's not that kind of going to unknown territory. There's a bit of an on-ramp where you're sure, like maybe you've never seen this type of syntax before. So like kind of get your head around that a little bit. And after a few sessions or a few projects or whatever, you kind of, like you say, get familiar with it. But I think it's still within the comfort zone. It's not too crazy. It's not too out there. Like I'm writing in quite a few different languages as well, or the AI is, but I've been doing Rust for over a year now, and now I can read it and write it. Maybe not the best, but I can spot things and things like that.
So I have a question for Zach. Why are you looking at the code?
I watch as the AI writes the code, because it outputs what it does. Sometimes I like to watch it write the code, and then during pull requests, I do review the code to make sure that terrible mistakes aren't being made. One of the things that, as a developer, you kind of get to know as you get to know a language, as you become an expert in the language, WordPress space especially. WordPress has so many functionality, like so many functions that it wants you to use instead of having your own custom version of it. So like time functions, you want to use the WordPress time functions. Using remote requests to like get stuff from external data sources, you should use WordPress's remote request stuff. So you just get to develop a code smell sensory input where you look at code, it's like, well, that's not right. Let me find out why it's not right. So I like to review all the code that we ship, even if it's just kind of scrolling through some of the more boilerplate stuff. I do want to make sure that I look at the code.
Yeah, I've noticed that there are different levels of what it's responsible to build with AI. Internal tools are the easiest thing, because as long as it's not a site with customer data on it, I have a separate site that I use for reporting and things like that. So there's no customer data or anything that could go terribly wrong. And I've added some amazing things to that, but it's never going to be shipped. It's just internal. So I think that's fine. The next level is something like a SaaS, where you control the environment and nobody can access the code, which I'm finding remarkably easy. But then the challenge comes with WordPress plugins. So, for example, I have got Claude Code to add features to our plugins and then do a pull request for the developer. And usually they'll say it's okay overall, but they will find major problems or something I've overlooked in the testing, or that something that was approached wrong, the sort of things that Zach's talking about, that I'm finding with plugin development on existing products in particular. You really do need that oversight, and you can't just go and release stuff.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about code so far, and you're absolutely right, Katie, that having a human review having humans in the loop is important. And as experts, we can talk about like what we know. One of the things that I've been using AI for is to do better meetings. And I've read some books about being a good leader. I try to internalize things. I've done a lot of therapy. I don't know, like I just, it helps to have empathy and all. But what also is helpful for a leader is to have to express your goals, to put forward a path that everybody gets aligned on, and everybody can see a common outcome that we agree to, and we work toward that goal. That kind of stuff for me is so hard to shape. And I've been using AI to read our calls after the calls and say, well, what did I do well? What did I do badly? How could I be a better leader? And the expertise that we're talking about so far is code and like building products and stuff. how do I be a better person? How can I systematize this? And I've got a lot of like reminders that I have set up all over my world where like I want to make it easier for me to get better at all sorts of things that I do. And having a system for that is one of the things that I've asked AI to help with.
Yeah, from my side, I think a little bit like what you're saying. So I like to use tools like Hermes or something similar, which is something that helps organize you and helps you stay organized. So my mind is a bit of a mess. I'm always chasing deadlines and deeply disorganized. So I like to use it to filter. I can basically brain dump and it can organize things for me. And do research for me kind of more passively. And when I forget about things, it will have found things in the background and remind me that, oh, this is, X, Y, and Z, things that need my attention and I might have forgotten about. So that's the kind of stuff I've been using it for.
I love it when it makes things more human for me, ironically. Like I might give it a draft email to say something difficult to a team member or something like that. And often it humanizes it further. So anyway.
When it takes my good draft and it makes it sound like drivel though. So like
sometimes, yeah. I don't always go with its recommendations. I would never ever just accept wording from an AI without my own input. But it's interesting to see its perspective, and it's like says, well, the team member may interpret this way and something like that I may not have thought of.
So what do we want? Like one of the things that the Laracon presentation talked about was he was building a video game. He was building a game with a JavaScript library that he had never used before, built on technology stacks that he had never known before. But he was interested in building a video game because he liked Minecraft, and he wanted to do something like Minecraft and have it represent the real world instead of a imaginary world. Kitty and I are in a mastermind group. One of our pals, Jason Coleman, I love hearing all the projects that he does with his children. They do like audio synthesizer apps where like you can tune frequencies and have like bass lines and stuff like that, and have like really interesting visualizations of tones and chords and stuff like that. And I find that I'm not that maybe creative when it comes to expanding my expertise. I don't really want to build a video game. I don't really want to synthesize.
Maybe that's
sound.
Not your passion.
It's not my passion. My passion is building stuff apparently on WordPress and online. I've always been just a web nerd. I'd love to hear what y'all are interested in exploring more with AI and what expertise you want to expand beyond.
So you were just talking about the music side. So I'm really big into music. I used to DJ and do a bit of production. Okay. It's like a past life. But I love music. I love creating music, and I love like playing records and things. So one thing that you just touched on about the synthesizers, something that I've been doing is it's kind of like the next kind of level, I think, from dev is kind of like learning how to build AI models themselves. So like super small bespoke models that run like on device. It's not like your cloud.ai. It's not they're not hugely complex, but they kind of do one task and do it really well if you make a good model at the end of the day. So on the music side, I've been building a drum machine. I don't know if you guys know too much about this stuff, but it's like a sequencer. It's like you draw in the pattern of the drums and it plays it, and it's a really typical kind of workflow when you're writing music, like music software like Ableton or something like that. So something that I used to get into quite a lot was I would get creative blocks. So I wouldn't know, okay, maybe I would, wouldn't know what to do with the drums next, like how I would program them in next. So I'm building an AI model to do suggestions. So like I'll have like say half a pattern written, and it can maybe suggest the next bit, or like for drums, like you'll have a kick and a hi-hat. So maybe I'll have painted in the kick. So I want my kick to be like this, and then it will suggest some hi-hats to go with it. So that's one thing that I'm kind of diving into building AI models basically. So I found a few little places where I think they could be useful. So I'm kind of experimenting with that. So one is this like hobby project, which is the drum machine. Another one is I'm building like a screenshot tool for the team at Search and Filter. I've been kind of on and off building it for a while to make life super easy for all of us. They're not that complex, but there's some workflow issues there that I never liked.
There are so many nuances to screenshots.
Yeah, it's more complex than it looks like from the outside, I guess. But there's one thing that I wanted to do. So I've got a little model in the screenshot tool, which is only 10 megabytes in size. And if you just give it an image, it's been trained to identify call to actions. So if I'm doing a screenshot of a Search and Filter admin page, or the Search and Filter fields on the front end, and we're going to put that in the documentation somewhere, it will identify form fields and call to actions. So it's like one click. So you just like kind of hover over and it will suggest some buttons, and you can say, click the submit button on your screenshot, and it will highlight it, add an arrow, label it, all like automatically. And that's just like super tiny little embedded model with some obviously kind of complex logic around it, like infrastructure.
Ross, we got to talk.
Yeah. I'm going to be demoing this thing in the next couple of days. There's some really nice videos of what it can do. I haven't seen anyone else doing anything like this, so that's cool.
Yeah, screenshots are a pain, and AIs aren't that great at them. I've got an okay thing going with it, but it's not very good yet.
So Ross, I'd love to hear more about how you went about conceptualizing expanding your knowledge into building a drum machine. Like, how did you go about saying like, this is something I want to do? And then how did you do it? Like not the technical aspect of it, but like the I'm going to learn how to build a drum machine side of things.
So like the first kind of AI model I was dabbling with did something specific, but it's as I'm like you say, you have to like learn the field that you're going into. So as I'm learning more, my point of view is expanding, and I'm like, oh, could I apply it to this field? Could I apply it to this? And as I'm getting more and more comfortable, I'm starting to think of like the business cases for models in certain spaces. But that's kind of actually the hard part, is like, where is a model suitable over like, especially like a small one that can't do a lot, over just writing, some really advanced code that, covers all kinds of use cases. So the drum machine was like one of the last things I've started dabbling with, but the foundation is trying other things first. And the first thing that I did, and I'm still working on now, is a speech to text model. So, I mean, we can get into like, how do you even go down that road, which is kind of insane to me also, because I'm definitely not experienced in any of that stuff. But I use obviously a lot of speech to text models here and there, and I don't think my accent is crazy, but they always seem to trip up on lots of things that I say. I think I mumble a bit. My voice is a little bit deep sometimes, and then also I have a bit of a northern accent, so it's not like a good example of British English or US English or anything like that. So there's all these little errors. And then one time I was just in bed just thinking, I don't know, I don't get these eureka moments in bed. It wasn't even a eureka moment at the time, but I was like, all these speech to text models, they all like have to work really well for everybody. Like you use the same model as the person next to you uses, probably Whisper or one of the few, the handful that are out there. So what if there was like a model that wasn't like for everybody, but it was trained on you, like on your characteristics of your voice? So it's like, how about that? So how, like, if you could learn my voice and the way I say things, maybe it could be really effective for me. So that was like a crazy rabbit hole. So I didn't really find much out there. And then, then I started to get into the LLM, so the model building side of things, and just, baby steps, trying things, looking at theories and doing some of this deep research stuff and building out little systems and little, proof of concepts, and then kind of going, this thing actually has legs. Like, I think if I do put all these like 8 different things together, maybe we have a pipeline here that can kind of work for this particular like problem space. So that's like probably is still the most challenging model to build out of all the kind of my experiments. But that got me thinking, okay, maybe like, we could get a model to fill in some other gaps in some other places. I mean, I can dive in a little bit deeper on that stuff.
That's really great. Like, if anybody has not played around with 11 Labs, they're a text-to-speech AI company. And one of the things that they do is they train an AI to sound like you. But you're talking about the inverse, about having your voice being understood. The 11 Labs interface has you read out a long tome. I think it has like The Great Gatsby as one of the things that it suggests you read, and it wants you to read like at least 15 minutes of it. It's really interesting. So I recommend everybody go to 11 Labs, sign up. They have a free trial, I think. Train your own voice and just like experience what it's like to hear what computers think you sound like, and your nuances and your tics and things like that. It's fascinating. It got very close to me, but it's still not me, which is pretty cool. Like,
and what's the purpose? What are some real use cases that you might use it for?
So obviously this was just like a random offshoot experiment, crazy idea that I had, like, just could it be better for me? But that's kind of snowballed a little bit into maybe some real use cases and maybe a real product one day or something like that. But the thing is with the current models that you've got that are on device, like you can pay for like a Whisper Flow, and it's a subscription, and your voice goes off and they have all the compute and they send it back to you quickly. But that's not on device, it's not private. So so when you're looking at what's on device and private, you've got a few options today, maybe 4-ish options. And we're all privileged probably that we have decent computers with some decent specs, and we can probably run those models and they work reasonably well, aside from the caveats that I've been finding, generally speaking. But when you want to talk about machines with less power, or if you're doing like heavy workloads on your machine, you don't also want to be doing a heavy speech to text workload on your machine. Sometimes I notice things whirring when we're doing this kind of stuff. So with the thing that I've been building, it's like way less resource intensive and way faster. So normally when you speak, you'll say like, it'll wait for like a pause in your speech, and then it'll kind of bunch that text up, might be a few words, might be a sentence, and it'll go off and come back, and I don't know, maybe you have to wait a couple of 100 milliseconds or something like that. What I've got working so far, it isn't complete, and it's not without its flaws, and not without some concepts I have to kind of get over first, but it will do almost word by word as you speak in like 50 milliseconds. So it feels like you're finishing the word, and you'll see the word on screen as you finish the word. So you asked about use cases, but it's kind of just like laying the foundation. It's super fast and super small, and not so resource intensive, and it uses a similar concept that you mentioned from 11 Labs. Like, it has to learn your voice first, so you have to give it some words. I've not read The Great Gatsby yet. I've only given it like just 20 words, and it kind of it does reasonably well. It doesn't need to copy me, it just needs to understand me. So when you think about like where could it work well, so I think accessibility is an amazing one. So people with speech impairments, so they'll say things in their way, but conventional systems won't recognize those words. So if you train it on someone's voice, they can use these systems freely. So I think that's like just a really cool use case. Another one is, let's say, language learners. So I was talking to a friend of mine from the US who's learning Dutch, and he was just saying it's super annoying that all these systems never recognize his Dutch because his Dutch is bad. But the way he speaks Dutch is at least consistent to him. So if it was trained on his voice, he could also do speech to text in Dutch. So you could, cover more use cases, cover more kind of. There's lots of places where the systems out there today, they just don't fill. And then you can do like on-device stuff. So it could be on your mobile, and it could be fast, and your mobile wouldn't heat up, and you could be offline. So there's not many things doing that today. So what I'm kind of want to go with as like a MVP is like a limited set of words for like commands and instructions that will respond really, really well, really fast offline, and really accurately, for like, add to calendar. Like if I use add to calendar on my Google phone, even with the new AI stuff they've got there, it still gets it wrong all the time. So just having that reliable and fast and offline, which you can't even do, that's like an upgrade already on what's out there. So I would be happy if we got there, which I think is very, very achievable. But then you can go, you could maybe do other hardware, like let's say you have a camera and you want to like tell it to take a photo of you. You put it over there and you run over there, and you can speak to it instead. And because it's trained on your voice, other people's voices won't get in the way. It will recognize your voice better in a noisy situation. There's kind of a crazy number of applications, so I'm super excited to kind of dive further into it.
Yeah. So many people are doing such amazing work with AI and really bringing things forward. It's always interesting how to make that decision as to whether to keep something internal for your own use and when to release it as a product. And a lot of people have released products just because they can, but then not follow through with any marketing or anything like that. So they're not realistically going to be successful with these products because it's all about the follow through and the execution, isn't it? Once it's out there. But it's an interesting decision because we can now build products, like really advanced stuff like what you're describing, so easily now.
Well, I wouldn't say easily, but
easily,
it's attainable,
but
right?
beyond what
it was never attainable.
imagined. 4 years ago, you
Yeah.
couldn't have imagined doing this on your own.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just gonna like open a web page one day and realize, oh, what I've been doing is like it's not rocket science. It's already been done. I just didn't look in the right place, because that's how unfamiliar this the field is to me, and feeling like a bit of a novice, even though I'm building things. But yeah, it's kind of crazy.
But one of the things that I think modernity is asking of us is to have that kind of interest and the go-get-em attitude where you just take it on, you learn it, you build it. I think a question that is going to come up, or that has come up a lot for me, is, well, what do I do with this now? Why have I built this? What is my goal? And Ross, for example, your speech model, like, are you planning an exit on this? Are you trying to sell it? Are you trying to license it? And if so, that's a whole nother can of worms that you have to open. Or is this just for fun?
I think it's good enough to start thinking a bit seriously about those crazy options. Going into there's going into a different field in terms of like creating things, but there's also like of running a business, or the type of business you have to run. And that's another scary thing to think about. But yeah, I mean, it's got legs. I really think it does. So I'll be exploring it. If worst case scenario, I'll just open source it, right?
Well, I know that Apple, for example, has been doing a lot of work on their local models for speech to text, and you use a Google phone, but it seems like maybe you could be convinced to join the Apple team.
Yeah, I mean, well, Google's a bit behind on that side of things, but I think the cool thing is with something like this, because it learns your voice, the way I'm thinking about it is you don't want to have to train all your different devices and all your things. I think maybe we're going to get to a point at some point where, all the big guys, they've probably got research and things like that. They just haven't released it yet. And I think, there's lots of improvements just waiting in the pipeline, and they'll come along. So, but then I'm thinking in that world, there is, they're all competing. So you'll train your voice in one system, and you have a similar thing in Apple where you have to give it a few words for the wake word stuff, for example. And everything's kind of going in that direction. And my system isn't too dissimilar. I'm guessing. I don't know their underlying tech exactly. But I like the idea of like having like a passport, like a voice passport, where you teach one system and all these other apps and things can just plug into it. So you don't have to keep teaching. And the more you use it, the better it gets at recognizing your voice. It's part of the system because you're giving it more words, basically. So I like the idea of like one central thing where it's like a voice passport, where you other software and plugins can kind of like just enable this API. And if you want to use your voice passport, it'll work perfectly with that thing, rather than like a vendor locking thing. That's what I see is out there today. Is all these big vendors that won't work with each other doing something like this. And this is, I guess, something that's kind of vendor agnostic. So that sounds cool.
Yeah, that sounds good. It also fits with the whole concept of a voice profile, which is not about the spoken voice. It's about your language and wording so that AIs can write on your behalf. And there's various ways you can do that with MD files and things like that. But I've never found anything any good that can write as
No.
me. I think it might be a British thing. So I'm interested in your experiences, Ross, but it does not get me. And the way I word things, it just can't do it. So have you had
It's
any
not
luck
just
with
you,
that?
Kitty. It's not just the British Isles.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to rewrite absolutely everything. There was a little period where I was making little templates of social media posts and things like that, and I would just look at it and go, God, this just doesn't sound anything like me whatsoever. Let's just scrap it all. Good idea. I'm just going to write it all in my own words, and that's what I do now. Yeah.
And yeah, so I mean, this conversation has sparked my interest in, okay, well, can I train a model? And we've done this. Katie and I have talked about this in the mastermind group. Is like, okay, building the voice of myself based on all the writings I've ever done and trying to synthesize it into some kind of rules or whatever. Those rules produce crap. They're not good.
It doesn't work.
But if I were to train an AI model on how I write and how I speak, well, hopefully more how I write, because my speech is pretty disjointed. But if I train the model on how I write, surely that would do better than just a markdown file that a pre-existing model would then ingest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing the models that we use, the really advanced models we use, they're for everybody always.
Mhm.
So they're very generalized. So maybe you could build a model which looks at grammatical patterns and sentences, and that's what it does. It identifies the pattern of your grammar and the ordering of your words, and maybe you could get some text from one of the big ones and feed it through that. And yeah, I think it sounds like there's some potential there.
Yeah, I like that.
The number one thing
Actually,
that
sounds like I should just go and do it.
Yeah.
Go for
So
it.
the next question is to AI. I would ask Claude Code, well, how do I build that? Right? And do some research, compare the best options out there, recommend an approach, and let's get started, that type of thing.
Yeah. Well, one thing I'm quite fascinated by is the concept of a one-person company. It's not realistic for an existing company to go there because the whole structure is based around a team after a while. But with AI, startups are increasingly just one person. And I think that links well into the topic of building beyond your expertise, because it means that one person can, say, be a marketing expert or a finance expert or whatever, in addition to whatever their main area was that led them to build the product or service that they decided to launch a business for. So I think it's also opened up the door for people to have kind of more hats instead of having to hire people to do every task.
Yeah, I recently built out a thing I call Ledger Kit. I like to suffix everything with kit. And for internal, for personal finance and also business finance. And I had it connect through Plaid, which is a service that connects to all your bank accounts and your retirement accounts and all that stuff. Because I was really tired of having to wait for my accountants to reconcile all the different accounts and tell me what's going on when they never actually know what's going on. But now with Ledger Kit, every week I have it tell me a summary of our account differences, and it has anomaly detection, it has retirement planning, it has all sorts of things where it's like, hey, your cell phone charged you 17% more than normal. Is this an acceptable thing? And that has led me to understand some different retirement considerations, algorithms, know what questions to ask in a way that I didn't really understand before in the world of finance. And that was just because I was tired of relying on other people to do something poorly when I could ask the world's expert on everything, AI, to research what the experts actually say and implement best practices for financial advice. So I have a new AI chatbot that I can talk to about all my actual finances and say, what are some subscriptions I should cancel, or where should I reallocate my finances? It's been really interesting.
Yeah, I like that. I've written down a note to myself of whether AI could reconcile my accounts rather than paying hundreds a month to the accountant to do that, where
Yeah.
really they're just following a set of rules which I have given them. If it's this sort of thing, reconcile it like
Yeah.
this. That
And AI is
actually,
very good at that.
And they
yeah,
might actually be using AI these days because they know what to look for and they can just automate away and then just
maybe
spot
they
the
are. So I
anomalies
could
or the
just
mistakes.
cut them out. Yes.
Yeah, it's funny. Talking about taxes, I did also use AI to help me file my Spanish taxes this year. I know you can relate
Oh,
to the
did you get
Spanish
rid of
tax system.
Eduardo, our shared
No,
accountant?
no, I didn't get rid of him. But I did all the prep and checked the workings and the numbers before I sent to him. Normally, I just wait for him to regurgitate it back to me, and I just go, "Yes, that's great."
Yeah,
But yeah, I
can't
got a bit of a
understand it
better
if it's the
understanding.
Spanish one. Yeah.
But yeah, I decided to build it as a workflow this time. So hopefully next year, I can kind of just like re-trigger some of that workflow and make my life a bit easier. Most of it's data gathering, all the manual steps of downloading, spreadsheets and things like that.
Yeah, good point. So I think we've covered that topic in quite a lot of depth and in directions I wasn't expecting. So that's good, like way beyond WordPress, which is what AI is bringing really, isn't it? That it is opening us up to experiment with all these new projects. So before we finish, we always wrap up the show with a quick roundtable question, which is, what is your best advice for anyone thinking about using AI to build something outside of their own skill set? Do you want to start, Ross?
Yeah, so this one is for developers out there. You already know how to build and think logically. What I would say is what I would encourage you to do is look for opportunities that are outside of standard dev work, but use your approach, the analytical approach, the testing-based approach, to kind of help you and enable you to reach further than you're doing today.
And I'm going to suggest as my best advice, what I was saying earlier that I heard the man say in Laracon, which is don't surrender to the AI. One of the things he suggested doing is before asking the AI what it thinks the problem is, come up with your own idea for why things might be working. Like don't just turn off your brain. And this is hard for me. I don't, I just say like, fix it, and enter. But I am recommitting to understanding, not just passing along my understanding of things to the AI. So
Yeah.
understand what you're doing, or try to. One of the things that you can do is say, build me a curriculum on this conversation and teach me what we did that I didn't know about.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I think mine is kind of similar to Ross's, and I would recommend not building outside of your expertise, but building adjacent to it, taking it a step further so that you know what questions to ask. Any unknowns, let's say they should be known unknowns, not unknown unknowns, because you have knowledge of the area. So even if you can't do it exactly yourself, you do know what questions to ask, what to check, and so on. And I would say take more risks if it's an internal project and fewer risks if it's something that affects real customers. Well, that's a wrap. Ross, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you online?
Thanks for having me. You can find me on X with my name, Ross Marcelli. And you can find me on my new website, operatorkit.ai. You might like that one. Zach.
Ross, come on, man.
That's actually a new little side project thing where I'm going to be talking a bit about AI. I'm planning to write about how to build a model,
Cool.
things like that. So a bit of information, and probably some products will end up there one day too.
Very cool. And if you are enjoying these shows, that is WP Product Talk, please do us a favor and hit that subscribe button on YouTube. It's free, easy, and it helps us support our work. And special thanks again to Freemius.
Yep, and next week, Zach and our co-host Ian will be back with guest Brad Griffith to discuss strategy before software. What organizations should clarify before building? So put it on your calendar. Thanks for watching. Bye.